And this is one of them, So we read in Judges 5 verse 7 in the NIV, it says, villages in Israel would not fight. They held back until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. In the New King James Version, it says, village life ceased. It ceased in Israel until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. Very interesting. Very interesting. If you read in commentaries around this particular verse and the context within which we find Deborah and Deborah arising, you discover that because of Israel's idolatry, the Lord had allowed the nation to fall into desolation. And there were so many challenges that the nation was facing. And I'm going to run through a few of them quickly. The first thing was that there was no trade. There were no soldiers to protect businessmen from the incursions of the enemy. There were no magistrates to restrain and punish thieves and robbers who had taken to plundering and robbing. And so consequently, all commerce had ceased and highways were unoccupied. Merchants just couldn't travel on the highways due to the dangers. And so literally trade had ceased. The second thing is that there was no traveling. There was no order, there was no government, and travelers simply were not safe on open roads. They were forced to use the byways and to hide as they were traveling to avoid robbers and thieves and to avoid having their goods plundered and stolen. The third thing was that there was no tillage in the fields. The fields lay fallow, they lay at waste and unattended to. And basically the inhabitants of the outlying villages and the country farmers had ceased from working the fields, and they'd left their houses, their homes in these vulnerable areas because of the frequent raids by bandits. And they took shelter in walled and fenced cities. They took shelter for themselves and their families. So there was no tillage, there was no growth of crops. Food was not being produced. There was no administration of justice. Because there was war in the gates. The courts were in the gates. That's where the courts were kept, and the continual incursions of the enemy, it deprived the magistrates of the dignity of their role, and it deprived the people of the benefit of the government of these magistrates. The enemy was just running rife. There was no peace for the people. The gates through which they passed, as I mentioned, were infested by enemy, and the places where they went to draw water were guarded by enemy archers. So life was difficult. Life was really difficult. And to top that all off, the people didn't have weapons to fight nor defend themselves, and we see that in Judges 5 verse 8. So either they'd been disarmed by their oppressors, or they themselves had neglected the art of war. So that although they had spears and shields, they were not seen, and they didn't know how to use them. They were thrown by, they suffered rust, they didn't have the skill to make use of them, or for whatever reason it was, they weren't fighting, they weren't defending themselves. And this was the tragic picture of the nation until one woman arose in obedience to a call by God. And I think if we look at our nation today, we can draw so many similarities. Many of us can see the gaps. Many of us can see the cracks and the leakages. And I'm sure many in Deborah's day could also see the gaps, cracks, and leakages. But someone actually had to rise up and do something about it. And I think that's the same today. I think as a people, when we see gaps, cracks, and leakages, we can't just jump ship if God hasn't called us to jump ship. If God has called us to immigrate, fantastic, that's awesome. But not everybody has that luxury. Some people have to arise and help and do and rebuild. And we see that in Deborah's case, she made an incredible difference, we see that she made an incredible difference. I love what it says in Psalm 110 verse 3. It says, "Your troops will be willing on your day of battle, arrayed in holy splendor. Your young men will come to you like dew from the morning's womb." In the NKJV it says, "Your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power. In the beauty of holiness. From the womb of the morning you have the dew of your youth. Your people shall be volunteers in the day of your power. So powerful, so powerful. And this is what the church needs as we go into a new season. This is what the nation needs as we go into a new season. We spoke last week about how in the wilderness, you fed with manna. Everything is given to you. In the promised land, you actually have to work. There needs to be a shift of mentality. We have to do something in the promised land. We can't just sit back and fold our arms and expect to receive everything on a platter. And it's the case today in our nation. Maybe there's a gap that you actually can rise up and fill. Maybe village life will cease until Tracy arose, until Deborah arose, until Saul arose, until Sean arose, Suni arose, until someone, Teacher Emma arose, until Gracious arose, until these people arise. Village life ceased until this had ceased, until someone arose. And often it just takes one person in a leadership role who will lead people to make a difference. And so I'm wanting to challenge us today. In what areas of the church do you see a gap that you can step up and fill? Maybe there's something that's not happening in a gap that you can see that you can step up and fill. You have the passion and you can get the training, or maybe you have the skill and the passion and you just need to step up and fulfill it. Fantastic. Come speak to us. What areas in society do you feel God nudging you to step up and step out in and make a difference? So important to think about this. Such an important character trait to have, that willingness to step up and say and be counted. Step up and say, I'll do it. Step up and say, I'll lead. I'll step up. I'll make a difference. I'll stand in the gap. I'll do. So important. We need more people like that, more church builders like that, more nation builders like that.